VAR in the Premier League is horrifically broken. I'll be the first to admit that on portions of the laws of the game, I thought, and still kind of think, VAR is a net positive. On portions, that's key word. My thinking was this: getting calls right is important. That much is obvious. If a player is clearly offside when the ball is played and scores the winning goal, it would be wrong to not correct that. If a player commits a red card offense when the referee or the AR isn't looking, they deserve to get sent off. That, to me, would be a good use of VAR. And I still think it's true. Getting calls right is still important. Think of some of the biggest, most controversial moments in footballing history. The hand of God with Maradona, for example, that are still talked about because, in the end, the whistle didn't go. VAR is a positive in those specific situations. Where VAR fails is literally everywhere else. And the Premier League in particular has done, I think, a horrible job with it in, for my opinion, three main reasons. So let's break it down. One, the appearance that a separate referee, not on the field of play, is re-refereeing the game without involving the center referee, aside from talking in his ear. Okay? The appearance of that. Two, the technology for things like offside simply isn't good enough, but is used like it is. And third, there is no public accountability of referees. These three reasons lead to vast inconsistencies and a feeling of injustice for fans both in the stadium that have paid lots of money to be there and watching on TV. The moment of delirious celebration is replaced with perhaps some celebration, but a lot of waiting will it count. It's like you want to like hug your mate and then you're like looking like is the ref is it you know, right? Like you lose that. You lose the emotion, part of the emotion of football, which is what makes it so great. It ruins the spectacle. We've gone from getting the critical calls correct, right? Again, hand of God, VAR should have gone there, right? If you had VAR, you'd be like, hold on, no goal, right? So you've gone from getting the critical calls correct to feeling like every single little itty bitty thing is getting re-refereed, and the balance is wrong. So let's break down the reasons, right? So re-refereeing the game. I think the easiest fix is if VAR believes a clear and obvious error has been made, and we'll talk about what that means. The center ref has to jog to the monitor on the side of the pitch every time. There's none of this. You know, like, has to jog to the side of the pitch, has a maximum amount of time to look at the footage, and makes a call as to whether or not he or one of the assistant refs made a clear and obvious error. The center ref knows how he's called the game. He knows the verbal warnings he's given to players to keep them in check. He has all the information. Let that referee make the decision as to whether or not it's clear and obvious. Now, what I can say is I just read an article today. This one, I'm going to put the link in the description. It's on Wolves' website. It's from their fans' parliament, which is kind of an awesome way to title a meeting. And shout out to Dave As a Party, who's a great Wolves content creator. He's done some Football Manager stuff. I'll also link his Twitter account in the description below. They met with Chris Foy, who was a Premier League ref for 15 years and is Professional Game Match Officials Limited's head of community and public engagement, which is a mouthful. But one of the things he said is, and I'm going to pull this down to quote it, is the referee, rather than VAR, will always have the final decision. Now, I'm not going to show you this whole article because it's not mine, but I wanted to highlight that for you. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't come across that way to fans. Whether you're watching on TV or in the stadiums, there have been many decisions where the ref stands there with finger to ear, which is essentially they're doing that. My take is so that fans can tell, like, hold on, we are looking at something, but then makes the call. So even if it's technically that center ref's decision with his finger in his ear, he's not looking at anything. He's not running over to the monitor. So it looks like to fans and watching on TV that it's the VAR's decision. So you can't say, you know, it's the referee rather than VAR will always have the final decision, because even if that's technically true, it doesn't come across like the impression you get watching is that is not true. Second, the technology for offside, I think we all know this. It's just not good enough, but it's treated like it is perfect. The reality is we're not using 1,000 frames per second cameras that are perfectly aligned with the player kicking the ball, nor the player trying to break past a defender. If you watch back many, I will say not all, many of the offside clips, the ball is often a blur. So like if the ball's supposed to be this big, sometimes it's like this big because it's being struck and like it's being caught in the frame of that shot with that camera and blurring. So it's blurred even just a little bit when leaving a player's foot. So you then go like, well, when exactly is the moment that the ball was struck? You need that information to be able to compare that very moment in time to the receiving player's position, which, by the way, can also be somewhat unclear because we're not using like 1,000 frames a second in our video footage. So the refs will say, and I actually think in this article, they say that there can't be subjectivity when it comes to onside versus offside. Either you're on or you're off, which, okay, true, technically, but the reality is we still don't know the exact moment the ball is struck to compare to the receiving player's exact position. So there's subjectivity already, right? It's not like we have a camera at pitch level, right? That's like below the player's like knees and looking, oh, there's a millimeter of air between the ball and the foot. Therefore, the ball is now struck. Now let's go look and compare to the receiving player's position as to whether they're onside or offside. You don't have that, right? So that brings us back to clear and obvious. Is it clear and obvious that a player was a nose hair or a toenail ahead of a defender? I don't believe so. And I think most fans would say, hey, it's clear and obvious when that guy is halfway past the defender. That's clear and obvious. Or like, obviously, if there's air between the defender and the player that's run past him, well, that's clearly offside, right? But if it's like, we're getting out a protractor and we're like, oh, you know, he does have some arm hair hanging out there. Technically, that armpit hair that's sticking out of his kit there, that's offside. Like, that's not clear and obvious to me. And that's like, I get that the IFAB laws of the game are written like you're either on or you're off. Like if your tip of your toenail could be used to score the ball in the back of the net, that therefore you're technically offside. But then you go back to the footage isn't at such a high frame rate that you can tell the exact moment, right? And I don't think fans agree. So maybe the law needs to be rewritten. I hope it does. But like, it's not clear and obvious that, well, it was, like there's been so many decisions where it's like, it's a perfectly timed run except for the armpit hair, right? And that's just, for fans, it's like, you sucked the emotion and joy out of the game by calling it that way. And lastly, I think all leagues, but especially right now the Premier League, because the Premier League is getting beat up like every time, at least here in the States, every halftime, every, post-match, they're talking a little bit about the game, but a vast majority of the time they're talking about what has gone wrong with VAR or the VAR decision or about, so the Premier League is getting a black eye because of this. I think all leagues, especially Premier League, would vastly improve just the public relations with fans if the referees had some sort of accountability process, right? Bring them in a press conference after the game. Managers and players get asked about things. The referees should be asked as well. Now, I'm sure the risk that like the referee association see is, the name of the refs getting run through the mud because they admit they got something wrong, or if people disagree with their interpretation of what they saw. And I'm not sure if any other major sports leagues do this, but it seems like it would aid the understanding of the public, right? Like, I don't even have to agree with you, but at least I could understand, hey, have the referee explain, this is how the law is written. I'll quote it for you. This is how the law is written. This is what we saw. This is why the decision was made. And now you're helping educate the public. But we don't do that, and they just scurry off the field. Sometimes managers talk angrily about it in post-match, they stick a microphone in their face type situation, and that's it. And I think that's a major problem. Like example, let's take the Chelsea-Manchester United game that happened this week. Pundits, the halftime show, the post-match show pundits, fans on Twitter, even like some Manchester United fans on Twitter were like, we seem to think, one, Harry Maguire clearly extended his foot to catch Batshuayi in the nether regions as he was falling. It looked like there was intent there. It looked very similar to Son, who got a red card for doing the same thing. And 2, that Chelsea's first goal called back for VAR because of a push by Azpilicueta on Brandon Williams was because Fred pushed Caesar into Williams. So it wasn't like he just ran up and decked the guy. He was pushed and like he naturally extended his arms, and Brandon Williams, I mean, to be fair, did his job and like felt the contact and fell over. But if you're going to look at things like offside to say like, well, in the build up to the goal, this foul happened or this offside happened, and so therefore it's not a goal, then you have to, I would think it would be logical to say, you can't just say, hey, Azpilicueta pushed Brandon Williams over. You have to say like, Fred launched Azpilicueta into Williams, and that's why Williams fell over, so it's not a foul, therefore the goal stands. But at least have the referee explain that. Hey, there's enough money in the Premier League to bring a television with a teleprompter where they could say like, and this is what I saw, and circling it and at least explaining it. At least you would get an explanation, but you don't get that. So I think those are the 3 things that are wrong with VAR in the Premier League. I'm sure you have thoughts on this. Do you think VAR is broken the Premier League? If so, how would you fix it? Let me know in the comments. Hit that like button. We'll see you next time.